Hello everyone and welcome back to English with Kaylee. Today's video is part 1 of 3 where I'll be teaching you how to annotate a poem in order to be able to analyze poetry to its full potential. Let's get started. So before you actually begin the annotation steps to analyze, there are some important things that you must do. Number 1, read the poem and do this several times out loud, because when you do it out loud, you can hear the rhyme scheme coming through, you will stop at various punctuations, etc., and that will help you to get a feel of the poem. Once you've read it a few times over, grab a pen, or if you're like me, several different colour pens to get ready to begin annotating. So over the course of the 3 videos, we are going to analyse Life is Fine by Langston Hughes. So I'm going to walk you through it step by step, and by the end of the 3 videos, we will have a fully annotated poem that you're then going to be able to work with to analyse it to its full potential. Let's read the poem. Life is fine. I went down to the river. I sat down on the bank. I tried to think, but I couldn't, so I jumped in and sank. I came up once and hollered. I came up twice and cried. If that water hadn't been so cold, I might have sunk and died. But it was cold in that water. It was cold. I took the elevator 16 floors above the ground. I thought about my baby and thought I would jump down. I stood there and I hollered. I stood there and I cried. If it hadn't been so high, I might have jumped and died. But it was high up there. It was high. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living I was born. Though you may hear me holler and you may see me cry, I'll be dogged, sweet baby, if you're gonna see me die. Life is fine, fine as wine, life is fine. So this is the poem that we're going to be analysing over the course of the next 3 mini lessons. So step 1, what's the first thing you should do when you're confronted with any poem that you have to study, or maybe you have an unseen exam? So step 1, my advice is always look at the title. Okay, so an excellent place to start is at the beginning. Look at the title, ask yourself, is it significant? Is it referenced in the poem, and how does it relate to its content? Sometimes it totally juxtaposes what's in the content, and that can be very interesting as well. So have a look and see, is it referenced once again in the poem, and what information can we gather from that? Consider the connotations, the various meaning of the words in the title. Note anything of significance in relation to the poem. So in order to do those steps, let's say here's our blank copy of the poem. Okay, so I'm just looking at the title and I say life is fine. Okay, what are the keywords there? Well, the keyword is fine. What does fine mean? What is its connotation? Well, fine can equal that something is satisfactory. Like if someone says, oh, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. It can mean high quality. And I've also made a point there that it links to the last line where the speaker says, life is fine, fine as wine, life is fine. So within the poem itself, it links to the last line, ending on quite a positive note. Then I move on to step 2, and this is where I look at context and meaning. So in this step, what you want to do is reread each stanza. And after reading, you want to think, can you summarize what happens? Keep this very brief. But it is important to look at this summary because it will help you to identify patterns or tone changes that may become evident to you through your analysis. And then, can you summarize the entire poem in one sentence? This really allows you to focus on the topic and not to deviate from it too far in your analysis. We want to really keep it central with the point of the poem. And also consider the speaker. Who is it, and how does the voice affect the poem as well? So let's do these steps as well then. Okay, so we've got our poem, and as you can see now, I'm just going to continue adding to my annotations. So we've still got step 1 there with the analysis of the title. So when I read through this poem, I thought, okay, I can break this down distinctly into 3 parts. Okay, so the first 2 stanzas shows me the first attempt at suicide. Okay, so this person has attempted to die by drowning. Okay, I went down to the river. I tried to think, but I couldn't, so I jumped in and sank. I came up once and hollered. I came up twice and cried. If the water hadn't been so cold, I might have sunk and died. So this is their first attempt. Then, if we move on to stanzas, let's say stanzas 3 and 4, because we've got the refrain, but it was cold in that water, it was cold. So I'm going to say stanzas 3 and 4. Stanzas 3 and 4, we see the second attempt then at suicide, and this one is where they're on the top of the 16th floor building, and they consider jumping down. And then I looked at stanzas 5 and 6, and this is, we see a change here. There's a resolution where the speaker decides that they're going to keep on living. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. So that's how I was able just to break it down into what is happening as the poem progresses. And in doing this, I can definitely already see a tone change as we get towards the end of the poem. We see a resolution, this decision to keep living, which is very different to the previous stanzas. So if I was going to summarize this then in one sentence, I may say, okay, the speaker attempts suicide. That's what's happening in this particular poem. And then I've gone ahead and I've circled the speaker. I've thought about the speaker, and we see here in the first 3 lines of stanza 1, we have I. Why is this important? Well, this is a first person recount. It makes the poem a lot more personal and intimate. It also puts the reader inside the mind of the speaker and their decision. So maybe if it was a third party recollection, we may feel more distanced from the speaker. But here we can really empathize and sympathize with their situation and their struggles. Then I also circled hadn't it been so cold, and in the last stanza I also circled dogged as well. And the reason that I did this is because this shows a particular dialect and vernacular. There's very much a real and authentic voice that comes through in this poem, and again that adds to the very intimate nature of the poem. You know, this very raw feeling and issue that the speaker's facing that they want to express. Then I circled my baby. I'm keeping this in line with thinking of the context and also the speaker, because the speaker thought about my baby and thought I would. And so the last thing that I circled there was my baby. And I was doing this in continuing to think about the speaker, and in thinking about the speaker and the context of the poem. In them saying, I thought about my baby and thought I would jump down, this gives us potential information as to the reasons why the speaker is in this situation now. Was this a lover? And is this the person who has caused this kind of the reason for upset and the suicide contemplation? So that's it for part 1. Do subscribe for part 2 and part 3. I also have this on my test page if you're a teacher and you'd like to also teach this to your pupils about how to walk through and annotate as a way to analyze. And by the end of the 3 videos, you're going to see how it all comes together to really support you in analysing any poem that you're faced with. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.